formula shortage. Just because you might have to go to 2 or 3 different stores doesn't mean there's a formula shortage. Just could mean that they don't have the one that you feed your baby with.
People here were initially crying when they heard that a baby was found dead on the side of the home behind me, but then those tears quickly turned to shock when we found out hours later that baby was just a doll.
It is not okay to roleplay that you have an autistic child. I can't believe I actually have to say this, and I'm probably going to get a lot of backlash and caught up in all sorts of drama by putting this out here, but this is incredibly offensive.
We're going to talk about this a little bit. It's very uncomfortable, and I will just warn you now that you're going to be uncomfy. It begs the question, though, if we are producing dolls like this, will there be the wrong type of person also secretly purchasing them because it's legal to do so? Hey humans, it's Hannah. Welcome back to the channel, or if you're new here, we do videos on creepy and disturbing things here, and today we are talking about Reborn dolls. Everything about them, what they are, the TikTok community, the drama, the controversy, but also why so many people find them so incredibly creepy and disturbing. There is a weird amount of niche drama that goes on in the Reborn doll community, and I want to talk about that today as well and watch some videos with you guys together. Now, I've wanted to make a video like this for a while, but I've hesitated because I feel like this community gets so much hate, so much bullying, and before you get mad at me before you even watch the video, I do urge you to keep watching the video because there's a lot of nuance here, and while I have a lot of criticisms of some parts of the community, I do go over first and foremost why a lot of the hate that they receive is unwarranted, and I do not judge people, for the most part, a lot of the people that are in this community. So if you're part of this community, please don't be scared of this video, and if you're not part of this community and you've always thought these were weird and creepy, maybe keep watching also, because your opinion of Reborn dolls might be very different by the end of the video. And even though we're going to go over all the creepy stuff and all the controversy, I think it's also important to better understand communities like this so that we are less likely to judge and less likely to hate on them. So just please bear with me, watch the video before you have one opinion or the other. I could not make videos like this without support from sponsors, so I'm going to roll to that, but I promise I will be right back. It'll be real quick. You know how when you become an adult, the best gift ever becomes socks? Have you ever received the gift of socks and not been incredibly stoked about it? Now imagine somebody gifts you a pair of socks, except they're the best, high quality, coziest socks you've ever tried on. But because you got them as a gift, the added bonus is that you know that somebody from a shelter also got the gift of those socks. Today's sponsor does all of that and more, and that is Bombas. With Bombas, one purchased equals one donated, and they've already donated over 150 million items to people that need basic essentials. However, I want to just take a moment to instill upon you just how much I love these socks. I've been buying socks for years before discovering Bombas. And with that other brand of socks, I always ended up getting a hole at the bottom of the sock just a few months into wearing them, and it drove me absolutely nuts. So I have been slowly but surely replacing all of my socks with Bombas. I find myself always reaching for them first, and I'm always bummed when they're all in the laundry because then I have to wear the other brands. Bombas socks are everything. They're super high quality and they're thick, but not annoyingly thick, if you know what I mean. They fit on your foot like a glove. I don't know how to describe it. They contour to your foot so well. I also got the weekend slides recently, and I call these my summer slippers because it's too hot to wear normal slippers, so I've been wearing these nonstop. We'll be taking these to the beach as well. They have compression socks, which I do have a pair of those, and I love them. They're great for long walks, hikes, or flights. They also have no-show socks. I have several pairs of their no-show socks. I absolutely love them. They even have formal socks, lacy ones with bows and stuff. So you can wear those with fancy shoes and it'll actually add to your outfit and make your outfit way more comfortable. Bombas has a 100% happiness guarantee, and they now offer international shipping. So instead of just the US, they now offer shipping to over 200 countries. Feel good and do good with Bombas, knowing that your purchase is doing some real good. New customers get 20% off their first order order. So go to bombas.com/HannahTheHorrible and use code HannahTheHorrible at checkout. Thank you again to Bombas for sponsoring today's video. Now let's get into it. Okay, so for those of you who don't know what a reborn doll is, let's give you a quick crash course first. Reborn dolls are hyper-realistic dolls. A real, true reborn doll is a handcrafted doll by a real artist, referred to as a, quote, reborner. They're so hyper-realistic that they are often mistaken for real babies. If you just saw one in a stroller, you probably wouldn't think twice. You would think somebody had a newborn with them. Typically, these dolls are made by an artist taking an existing doll from a factory, vinyl or silicone, and they remove all of the paint from this doll's body and head. They remove all the paint, all the features. They then meticulously paint the doll with many layers of paint to make the doll look as if it has real skin and real features, like down to seeing kind of veins beneath the skin. If their eyes are open on the doll, their eyes are replaced with more realistic eyes. The artist then weaves in often real human hair, which can take many hours of work. They weight the babies to match more how it would feel to hold a newborn. Like, they especially put weights in their head so that their heads are floppy, just like a newborn, and you have to support their head. Some of these dolls come with extra features like magnets in their mouth, so you can give them a pacifier. Some of them have voice boxes so they can cry or whine. Some of them have even like breathing apparatuses or heartbeats, again, depending on how much you're willing to pay. And speaking of how much you're willing to pay, as you can imagine, these things are pricey. They really started in the early 1990s. These things have actually been around for several decades, and they've more just become more popular in the recent decades with the niche on TikTok, I would venture to say. But of course, they've always been pricey. You cannot find a real artist-made reborn doll for less than a few $100s. If they're under $100 or cheaper, like you can find on Amazon and other places, 99.999% of the time it's a scam. And the pictures, there's so many reviews. If you go through, there's so many reviews saying that the picture advertised on whatever generic website does not match the doll that arrives in the mail. The price is very justified and very valid. If you want something that looks hyper realistic, like a real baby, you cannot expect to go pay $50 on Amazon for it and get something high quality. Like I said, these artists spend hours and hours on just one doll, even weaving in, like we talked about, real human hair. So a few $100s for the less experienced artists or ones just starting out, or maybe they probably use vinyl dolls rather than the silicone dolls. Silicone feels way more like real human skin and feels more realistic, so those silicone dolls are more expensive than the vinyl dolls. It all depends on a bunch of factors, but generally they're at least a few $100s. I usually see them at the cheaper end of $500, but these dolls, of course, get into the thousands. It is not uncommon to see a doll for $1,600, $2,000, $3,000. These sometimes go into the tens of thousands of dollars. People collect these. People get very passionate about this hobby, and some people genuinely just collect them because they like them. However, there are a lot of legitimate uses to having a reborn doll. Grief is a big one that is talked about on social media. It's a lot of older women that have these dolls, but I've seen a lot of younger women or younger AFAB people having these dolls as well. Sometimes people who either have a stillbirth, they have miscarriages, or they found out that they're just infertile completely, will often use these dolls as therapy and use the doll to either remember a newborn that they lost or to grieve their infertility, that they'll never get to be a mom if that's what they want, etc. Another really important use for these are disabled folks. A lot of people with either physical or mental disabilities might be able to use these dolls as companions and as therapy without actually, if they can't care for another thing in real life, it's a good way for them to be able to an outlet for their nurturing side, you know, something to nurture and take care of without risk to a real child. I see a lot of the owners of these dolls online. It feels like many of them, at least that I saw on TikTok, say that they have autism, and having these reborn dolls is a really, really great comfort, hyperfixation, kind of security item for them. Along those lines, people that are very, very elderly, or people that might have dementia or Alzheimer's, these reborn dolls can also be a great comfort to them, because holding a newborn, holding a baby could be extremely healing for a lot of people. Not saying all people like babies. If you don't like babies, love that for you. But for a lot of people, holding a baby it fulfills something in us. You know, holding a baby is the connection, the bond with holding a baby and being kind of the source of safety and being responsible for keeping that baby safe can be really fulfilling for a lot of us. And it could be extremely helpful for people with dementia or just very, very elderly people who might be lonely. And having a reborn doll might give them a sense of purpose. It might give them a feeling of not feeling as lonely. Or, you know, sometimes it's therapeutic. I've heard testimonies, obviously I don't have any data on this, but testimonies of people, like, if they don't talk because of their dementia, they'll like be given a reborn doll and suddenly they're talking like crazy to the reborn doll as if it's their old self again. So then besides all those uses, they're also used as movie props. Like, these are extremely great for movies where there might be a newborn baby that the baby in the movie is way too young to get a real baby. For example, a birth, you know, if you've noticed, every time they use a real baby, it's always like a 2 to 4 week old baby. It's obviously way too big to be a newborn baby. So they now use reborn dolls as, you know, for birth scenes and stuff like that. But also when real babies can't work that much, obviously. So when they, in order to get the baby less screen time and save the time that the actor's allowed to be working, they use these fake babies. And in some cases, they don't have to use a baby on screen at all, which I think is really, really cool as we talk more about childhood labor rights and social media and stuff like that. I think it's only beneficial to use less children in movies as well, so that they're not overworked or acting before they can consent to acting, before they really want to be actors. So as you can see, there's a lot of extremely valid reasons why these are used, why people collect them. And that leads us to our next point, which is unfair criticism that this community gets. I want to talk about the unfair criticism before I go into the fair criticisms, of course. So the first biggest unfair criticism that people note is that there is a lot of sexism, misogyny, rooted in the hatred for the hobby, rooted in people that have reborn dolls. People that have reborn dolls, you know, call that person creepy, call that person a freak, say it's really weird. And it is hard not to notice that it is a majority female hobby. It is mostly for women. It's hard not to notice that. And very similar to K-pop, for example, or the Twilight series. Regardless of some fair criticisms of those communities, we are so mean to anything that young girls or women like. Twilight fans are mercilessly ridiculed online for liking Twilight, and people find it cringe and stupid because it's young girls that often like it. People call them creepy when it's just a hobby that encourages nurturing and love. And then there's the paradox of our society telling women that all they should want to do in life is be a mom. That is the message that is often portrayed to us, that should be our life's mission, and that there's no other fulfilling thing that you could do with your life other than being a parent, especially being a mom. So when these women can't have children, and they want children, they do happen to want what society tells them they should want, so they get reborns instead because they can't have children for whatever reason, and then we ridicule them for it. So there is just giant double standards, because I can promise you that a man who has a YouTube channel or a TikTok channel really, really, really into Legos, collects Legos, you know they're out there, has rooms full of Legos and plays with them as a grown man, everybody thinks that's amazing. And it is cool, but like, it's, you know, it's just a hobby to everybody. They're super into something that is made for kids, And we're like, oh, that's so cool. Look at your collection. You made this entire Star Wars thing out of Legos. And that's so cool. But then when women like dolls, which are supposed to be for kids, then they get this reaction and they're called creepy and freaks and weirdos. It's just cringe to a lot of people. And I think that is super unfair. There's an entire subreddit devoted to Reborn doll cringe. While I understand that subreddit is not making fun of the whole community, but more just like the ugly dolls, we'll get to that subreddit here in a minute. I do think that some people on that Reddit, not accusing the whole subreddit of that, but some people on that subreddit are just like unnecessarily mean and judgmental to people who like this. And I also just want to remind you that it's not illegal to be cringe. And cringe is also a subjective term. Something cringe to a lot of people is not cringe to another group of people. And it's like, just let people enjoy things, damn. It just reminds me a lot of when I was a teenager. And while yes, I was emo, I loved My Chemical Romance, I loved Escape the Fate, shit like that. I genuinely loved those bands. I also genuinely low-key loved Britney and Taylor Swift, honestly. I found a lot of her songs really catchy. And I felt pressured to make fun of those artists and pretend like I hated them. And I just hate that. I just wish that people could like what they like. Okay, so I want to start off the video with that so that you guys all know that I am not judging this group of people as a whole. In fact, I actually have a very positive association overall and positive opinion of the Reborn doll community as a whole. So if you like these, just know I am not judging you whatsoever, and my goal is to help people also not judge you and not be mean, unless you're doing some of the super weird problematic stuff that does come out of this community, unfortunately. So some fair criticisms. Let's talk about the controversy. So the main criticism that you'll see over and over is they're creepy. I am about to show you some pictures of the creepy Reborn dolls, because this is what most Reborn dolls look like. Like, while it is like pretty uncanny valley, it's, you know, it looks like a baby. But I'm about to show you some of the pictures from that people have found on the Snark subreddit, on the cringe subreddit. And no matter however creepy you're thinking that these are in your head, double it. And then after that, triple it. And then after that, you're still not prepared. Trust me, because some of these are just wrong. Because when we have dolls like this, or this, or this, or this, and here's a few more, it is understandable why some people have a bad perception of Reborn dolls. It doesn't really help the reputation. However, I do want to note that this subreddit is pretty much devoted to posting the bad, ugly dolls, and I do think a lot of these come down to inexperienced or just plain bad artists that are just not very good at it either yet, or they're just not good at it in general. Like, sorry, it's okay to also be bad at something. And I do think that most collectors are not going out and buying these dolls. I think the vast majority of them do want realistic, cute Reborn dolls. And then in terms of being creepy, here's kind of a gray area in between unfair and fair criticisms. The whole Reborn doll community does a lot of role playing. We're going to talk about that throughout this video, but people, when they role play, it gets immersive and it gets very detailed, and it does, to an outsider, again, so I'm so sorry. I'm like, you're not hurting anybody, right? So there's nothing wrong with that, but I can understand why it feels a little creepy to people that don't get it. And people role play. Here's some examples of some role playing with the dolls, and it's might be a little more intense than you're imagining.
Let's get my fake baby ready for nap time. Cohen was chilling by my side in the office while I was getting some work done, but he started fussing, so I figured it was probably time for his bottle. I sat him in his swing so I can get his bottle all ready. Cohen has been very consistent with 2 ounces of milk, and sometimes he's still hungry after he's done eating, so I went ahead and gave him 3 scoops of Kendamil, and we'll just have to see how he does with 3 ounces. I went ahead and refilled the bottle warmer with some water, and then I popped in his bottle. Cohen was still fussing, so I decided to go grab him from his swing and try to comfort him while we waited for his bottle. As soon as I heard the bottle warmer beep, I went ahead and grabbed his bottle. He was definitely getting very impatient. I quickly sat down with him, and we started his feeding. He did very well with his 3 ounces, so I think it's safe to say we finally graduated from 2 ounces to 3. Once he finished that, I wiped his little mouth and I gave him a quick little burp. I switched from patting to rubbing from his lower back to his upper back to help it come out a little bit smoother. Once he was all burped out, we had a little bit of snuggle time, and he fell asleep pretty quickly. I've been working on getting him more comfortable sleeping in the crib. I was able to transfer him without too much of a fuss, and luckily his crib is right outside my office, so I can easily keep an eye on him.
Let's do the morning routine of my reborn baby Ivory. When Ivory woke up, she was very hungry, so the first thing I did was I got out everything I needed to make her bottle. As always, fake formula. After I got out her outfit, her bottle was done warming, so I got her bib on and then I fed her. She drinks everything so slowly, which is not a help for when we are in a rush. But thankfully this morning we are not going anywhere. But she actually did drink almost her whole bottle. So I took off her bib and then it was time to get her changed. So I set her down in the Snuggle Me. Here's her outfit. It is so cute. It's got these little flowers on it. And that's all for Ivory's morning routine. Thank you guys so much for watching. Bye! Emerson's daycare has been cancelled all week and we just got more snow. And Emerson has been outside all day. I'm not sure how she isn't freezing, because all she has is a coat and some layers. I seriously need to get her a snowsuit. But anyways, I made her come inside for a little while to rest, and because I don't want her getting sick, I took off her wet snow clothes and then I put her in this dry sweater. And seriously, this is so cute. And Emerson is a toddler and she doesn't take naps every day. She just kind of falls asleep when she's tired. So I put a show on for her, and then I got some stuff done, and then when I checked on her, she was sound asleep. So I turned off her show and I went upstairs and made her a snack plate. And I just gave her some cheese and crackers, nothing fancy. And also because I want her to stay warm, I got her some milk. And then I put it in the microwave for a little bit. And this time I made sure to check because the last time I used milk in my videos, it turned out to be expired. And as you guys know, I eat all my doll's food. So that means I ate rotten milk. Anyways, when I heard her stirring, I went into the nursery. Then I got her up and I gave her her food. She ate almost everything. And then I took her snack plate so I could go wash it. But I let her keep her milk, obviously. Then she wanted to go back in the snow, so we got on her snow gear and went back out.
So yeah, again, I want to be really careful because I don't want to, they're not hurting anybody by role playing most of the time, right? And we'll get to that, but it's really, there's nothing wrong with wanting to role play with your dolls, but I think posting it online, people that don't, and I know people in the community really enjoy watching these, right? They really, really like watching other people role play with their dolls, but it is just like objectively to people, like I said, people that don't get it, it is just a little creepy. I'm so sorry. It is a little creepy. And it's so hard because again, it's like, why are we telling adults that they can't play? Like, we should always use our imagination. This might be really fun for people, but I do get the criticism, even though it's not always fair. Okay, so now more of the more detrimental criticisms. We're going to talk about the 2022 formula shortage because the drama that happened in the Reborn doll community during that time was unmatched. And a lot of people didn't know about this because the community is fairly niche. Some Reborn mommies were in the 2022 shortage of formula. So like I said, you role play with these, but with that, the 20 people buy real formula for their babies, and there was a nationwide shortage of formula. Moms were having trouble going to the store and finding the formula that they needed for their real babies who were going to go hungry without it. I'm sure more people were doing this than we knew about, but the biggest public offender of this was somebody named Millie Hooper. She was the main person posting about this on TikTok, posting her buying the formula and then mixing it up and giving it to her reborn dolls. And people in the comments were like, cool, I can't even find formula for my own baby who is starving. And you just, okay, cool. You know, I do remember the formula shortage. If you don't know, if you're not familiar with childcare and children, if babies generally under 6 months cannot eat solid foods, like at all, they rely on either breast milk or formula. And there are many reasons why a mom might not be able to breastfeed her baby. And I would argue that even after 6 months, when they're eating solids, they're eating baby food. They practice with like rice crackers and stuff like that to eat solid food, but it's not like they're eating a meal at 6 months, right? They're just eating baby food every now and then, and they're more practicing. They're not actually getting their full nutritional load from that. So they continue to stay on bottles till at least 12 months. A lot of people breastfeed for a year and a half, even longer. Some people cut it off before then. Some babies just don't want bottles after around 12 or 13 months. I know a lot about this because I used to work in an infant room at a daycare, by the way. I don't have kids, but I love children. I love babies. So that's why I know a lot about this. I've taken classes and stuff like that. Anyway, babies under 12 months cannot have cow's milk. They have to have either breast milk or formula. So a formula shortage, and there are legitimate reasons why some women can't breastfeed. We're not getting into that debate today, but there are extremely legitimate reasons why some women simply cannot, or they cannot feed their baby enough, you know? And so they rely on formula to either feed their baby or to supplement their breast milk. So with a formula shortage, if you can't find enough shortage, your baby is literally going hungry and not getting the nutrients that it needs at an extremely vital time of development. And meanwhile, this Millie Hooper over here is buying formula from the store when there's a shortage and mixing it up literally to end up pouring it down the drain. People were rightfully mad, especially because in the Reborn community, it's often advocated to use other stuff for milk. So a lot of people mix flour in water. A lot of people just use fabric softener for their Reborn baby bottles and stuff like that. And then they can use it a lot too. They can use it over and over because it's not going to, you know, go bad, at least the flour and water might, but not like fabric softener, right? So that's actually, again, I want to say, like, I just want to reiterate that only a few people were doing this. Most people in the community recognized that they shouldn't be buying real formula just to throw it down the drain. Millie has since deleted all of these videos. It was frustrating because she did kind of double down in a lot of ways and didn't handle the criticism very well.
Formula shortage. Just because you might have to go to 2 or 3 different stores doesn't mean there's a formula shortage. Just could mean that they don't have the one that you feed your baby with. You could buy the SMA, but you don't, because that's what your kid wants to drink and eat. So therefore, you have to go to another store in order to get it. Doesn't mean there's a formula shortage. It just means they haven't got it in stock at the moment. And a formula shortage does actually mean not the fact that it's actually not in stock. A formula shortage is where the factories cannot produce.
She is so smart.
And they can. So again, we're not in a formula shortage.
But I also think it's relevant to note that Millie, I think allegedly, was only 19 years old at the time when she was posting these TikToks. And I know 19 is an adult, but barely. Like, do 19-year-olds know their mouth from their ass at that age? I don't think I did. So like, I do think while the criticism was fair, I'm not saying that it wasn't messed up. I'm just saying that hopefully she has learned from this and hopefully has reflected on the criticism, and maybe she has understood why this was so problematic. Like, she's not an awful person or anything like that, and she seems to have left the internet. I could not find any recent videos from her. Okay, so that was the 2022 formula shortage. Now we're going to talk about how this community has been problematic when people have left these babies in certain places and people mistake them for real babies. In July of 2008, which I know was like 17 years ago, but remember, these have been around for decades. In Queensland, Australia, police had to smash in the window of a car because they thought a baby was locked in the car. They then realized that it was a doll. In July 2016, in New Hampshire, in the United States, somebody called the police because they found a baby locked in a car in a shopping plaza, and I believe it was a hot car as well. And especially through the windows, though, they couldn't tell that this was not a real baby. A police officer rushed to the scene, smashed out the window, and even thought that the child was dead. The officer even started CPR efforts before realizing that it was not a human baby. He had to actually call the ambulance to tell them that it was a false alarm. Like, he had called the ambulance to the scene. When the owner of the doll found out what happened, she explained that she had the doll because of the loss of her son, which I think we can empathize with, and this was a over $2,000 doll. But the news reports about this also said the woman was upset about the damage to her car, which, like, seriously? That like actively pisses me off. What did you think was gonna happen? You left a hyper realistic baby in a hot locked car and you thought people would just be like, it's probably fine. That's insane to me, to be upset that somebody broke your window to save a baby, or what they thought was a baby. The police department even paid for the damages to her car to get it fixed. And the woman, to her credit, got a bumper sticker on her car that also explained that it was a doll, explaining there was a reborn doll in her car so that hopefully that wouldn't happen in the future. But like, to me, I don't think they should have paid for her car. I honestly feel like she should have taken that as the lesson and used that as some consequences to her actions, because I'm sorry, if you're gonna bring something that looks like a real baby, if you're gonna bring it in the car with you, then bring it in with you. Bring it shopping with you then. If you're gonna bring it around with you out and about, put it under the seat, you know? Put something over it so that people can't tell. At least do that if you don't want to leave the reborn doll at home, right? The audacity to be shocked when somebody wants to save a baby from a hot car is mind-blowing. And then probably the most disturbing news story was in June of 2019. A baby was found at a park in Queens, New York, dead. A woman was jogging in Queens and she saw what looked like a face-down dead infant on the side of the sidewalk. So she, of course, was traumatized and called 911. Police arrived quickly. They didn't realize that it was a doll. They set up a perimeter, like they set up a crime scene tape perimeter, and called EMS workers, who also came to the scene and declared the child was dead. Over 24 police officers arrived at the scenes, EMS workers, and it finally took the medical examiner to come because they thought that it was a dead body. It finally took the medical examiner to come and say, guys, this is not a real human. Nobody touched it to find out. It took them over an hour to figure out that it wasn't a real baby. Now, to be fair to the police officers, it was made to look dead. It was a reborn baby made to look dead. And I know that is a wild sentence to come out of my mouth, but let me explain. Just like there are really ugly reborn dolls, just like they're really cute, adorable, realistic reborn dolls, there's also a whole genre of reborn dolls called alternative reborns, and these are reborn dolls with a fictional twist. So like, for example, there's an Avatar baby. This is a popular genre, Avatar reborns. There's Yoda. I've seen a werewolf pup. There's like this goat Satan baby, and yes, there are zombie like reborns. I really want to show you what it looked like in Queens because there were pictures online of this doll in Queens. I will try to see if I can show you. I know it's just a doll. It's not a real person, but it does look really realistic. And I don't know if YouTube is going to get mad at me or not. I will decide in editing. And if not, I think I'll try to put a link down below for you guys to look at it then, I think, or tell you where to find it or something like that, because it is really interesting to see. It's not disturbing because you know it's fake, but again, YouTube's system has been really on my ass lately, so I'm trying to not piss them off. But the one in Queens, if I don't show you, it's like a blue hue to its skin. It was made to look dead. I think that it was kind of a zombie one is my understanding, because it was even wearing a shirt that said The Crawling Dead. Get it? Instead of The Walking Dead. And most likely what happened was that this was a sick joke by somebody. This was a sick hoax, which is kind of insane considering how expensive these dolls are, to just leave one out as a hoax to make people scared there was a dead baby lying around. They even put it face down on purpose, I think, to make it less obvious that it was a doll. And that's just a really sick joke. And what an expensive prank. That's insane. However, I'm not gonna lie, I'm kind of vibing on the alternative reborns. I kind of want one. Not an Avatar, but the little demon baby, the little goat demons, the demon or the dead looking ones, I kind of low-key like them because they're like creepy haunted dolls except hyper realistic. I don't know if that's super unhinged, but I kind of like them. I kind of want one for my background. I just don't know if I want a $1,000 background prop, but crazy. I do kind of like the demon. I like the creepy ones. Okay, so as you could see, there have been some problems and controversies that have arrived. However, there is another big controversy that we're going to talk about, which is kind of had a twist because it's not what you'd think it is. So there's this rumor going around all over social media, all over the Reddit of people just saying this as like a side casual remark. And people are claiming that, especially in Brazil, but everywhere, there are certain moms that are taking their reborn babies to the hospital, to the real hospital, to the ER for medical attention to be treated. But as far as I know, I think this is just a rumor. I don't think this has ever actually happened. Again, I keep seeing this rumor on Reddit of people like, oh, they're bringing these things to the ER now, blah, 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 blah. But I don't think anybody's actually looked into those claims very carefully because I could not find one documented case of this actually happening, of somebody actually bringing a reborn to the hospital and saying my baby's sick and needs help. Now, I think this rumor comes from true stories, that kind of the game of telephone of the internet. So let me explain. There was a documented case of a couple bringing their reborns into a hospital, and the human mother was allegedly wearing scrubs, and she claimed that it was just because she had gained some weight recently and the scrubs were the only thing that fit her, but didn't see the problem with going into a hospital in scrubs is obviously going to be confusing for patients, and you're going to look like a nurse and it's going to look like you're impersonating a nurse. So they tried to sneak into the maternity ward at the hospital. Again, remember, she was wearing scrubs, and then they got caught, of course, and kicked out. But they claimed that they weren't trying to take their dolls in for medical care. They claimed that they talked to a nurse who said that those reborns would be great for the maternity ward. I think kind of like we talked about in the last TikTok video of the mannequins, where you practice on fake humans in order to practice so you don't, if you make a mistake, you don't hurt real patients, right? So I think that was the idea, and they like allegedly went into the hospital, went into the maternity ward, and were trying to show the staff in the maternity ward their reborns. I think to either sell them or to just share the hobby with them. It's not super clear, but of course they got in trouble and were kicked out, and she, instead of, she denied that she was trying to impersonate a nurse, but it kind of feels like she was trying to impersonate a nurse, allegedly, in my opinion. But they weren't taking their baby to the ER. And then there's rumors, like I said, about this happening in Brazil, moms taking their dolls to the ER. And like, I did find a headline about that. It's very unreliable source, very tabloidy source, mind you. But the headline said that this is going too far. Moms are bringing their reborns into the hospital. But if you actually read the article, it's a completely different story. It's a completely different reborn doll story. If you actually read the article under this headline, it's about it's equally wacky because it's about a mom who is fighting for custody of the reborn with her ex-partner because her and her partner broke up, and they are fighting about custody, and actually went to a judge to ask if the judge would help them with this custody battle. And the judge was like, no. And this woman was even asking on social media and Instagram, like, what should be done in this situation. And again, even then, I think the problem was that the reborn doll had a social media account that they were fighting over. So they were probably fighting over the money the social media account was making, but they also claimed they have emotional attachments to the doll and all that. But anyway, again, this article does not talk about any documented case of somebody actually bringing their reborn into a real hospital and being like, my reborn needs fluids. That doesn't make any sense anyway. They wouldn't be able to actually do anything. The other thing I think this is getting confused with is the role playing. So we talked and showed you some of the role playing earlier, but a lot of the role playing scenarios are their dolls getting sick. And I've seen this with regular dolls and the reborn dolls. Of the doll, the whole premise of the role play video is that the doll gets sick and they need to treat it, and then sometimes the doll needs to be rushed to the hospital. But in these videos I've seen, they're never actually in a hospital. I saw one that was using B-roll of stock footage of a hospital, of an ambulance and a hospital, and then they just show the doll then in the hospital and somebody wearing gloves pretending to be the doctor when it's really the person filming, right? Nobody's actually taking their doll to the real hospital. They're role-playing taking the dolls to the hospital. So this big criticism about reborn people taking their dolls to the hospital, as far as I know, is unfounded and not rooted in truth whatsoever, and just kind of a rumor that's spread. And that is kind of hurtful to the community because it makes them seem crazy, and it makes them seem like they fit the stereotypes that people give them, that they're weird and crazy and freaks and disturbed, when the vast majority of them are completely normal people that just are enjoying a hobby. This is just perpetuating the bullying and the ridicule when there's no evidence that they've actually ever done this, that anybody's actually done this. However, within the community, sorry, it's all connected, but within the community, there has been criticisms of these role plays. So taking care of your reborn is one thing, you know, changing its diaper, feeding it, and filming it all for, you know, a day in the life of my reborn kind of thing, or my morning routine with my reborn doll. But some people argue that when people are role playing sick, but sometimes they're role playing colds and flus, but other times they're role playing like limbs being broken, or even these reborn dolls having cancer, and playing out these whole scenarios of their baby having cancer, which I think is pretty offensive to a lot of people. Real parents with children, with real children with cancer, it's really not cool to see somebody online and making it into a game, making it into entertainment, romanticizing and glorifying having a child with cancer. I do understand that criticism. Okay, the next drama / criticism is Arie. Arie, the autistic reborn doll. Now, there's a very infamous mom in the reborn community, and I'm not going to share personal info about this mom because from what I saw from other people talking about her, we're trying not to give them more engagement and clicks and everything because they're terrible. So this particular mom reborn mom has a doll named Arie. We see Arie all over. You cannot go to reborn doll forums anywhere without seeing Arie. And this is what he looks like. And mom role plays that Arie has autism. She claims that she does this to raise awareness because of course she does. She's gained a lot of criticism about this roleplay, though, because, of course, she is mostly just feeding into autistic stereotypes. And then the other big criticism is that she uses the puzzle piece in a lot of her posts. She uses the puzzle piece emoji. And if you don't know, the puzzle piece is a reference to Autism Speaks, autism organization that's supposedly supposed to be autism advocacy, but it has garnered a lot of deserved criticism over the years because Autism Speaks is just an objectively terrible organization. I'm not going to go into a deep dive of Autism Speaks, but the TLDR is that they treat autism as a disease that should be cured and feed into the stereotype that there's something wrong with you if you have autism or if your child has autism, which of course is not true. There's absolutely nothing wrong with having autism spectrum disorder. It's also just straight up not a disease. It's called autism spectrum disorder. So she's just very clearly doesn't understand autism, and anybody who has ever looked into autism at all knows that Autism Speaks is a terrible organization, in my opinion. And then I saw somebody on Reddit allege, again, take this with a grain of salt, this is alleged, that this reborn mom has called people the R slur when they criticize her. Like she has actually used the R slur when people criticize her for her doing these role plays, which is just, I don't have to explain why that's cuckoo bananas. I'm gonna play you a TikTok from this person about talking about this particular mom, because I think she'll do a better job at explaining the criticism than me. She's not only autistic, but she's also a reborn doll, a hobbyist, and an artist. And so I think she has the best perspective on this. So here's that.
It is not okay to role play that you have an autistic child. I can't believe I actually have to say this, and I'm probably going to get a lot of backlash and caught up in all sorts of drama by putting this out here, but this is incredibly offensive. I collect reborn babies. I think it's completely fine for people to role play with their reborn babies as though they were real. What I do not think is okay is role playing that your reborn doll has a disability and perpetuating harmful stereotypes about that disability, especially when you don't have that disability yourself and you know very little about it. Now, for those of you unfamiliar with the reborn community and the drama that's going on at the moment, we have someone in the community who has a doll. The doll's name is Arie. I'm not going to name the individual because I don't want her getting any more attention than she already has, but she is role-playing that her doll Arie is autistic and posting all sorts of things. I will show you some examples about how difficult her days are because Arie has meltdowns or finds it hard to be out in public and things like that. She has specifically told people that she does not have autism herself and she's purely doing this to raise awareness. She has also stated multiple times that her doing this role play is not offensive. Now, I am someone that collects reborns. I try and do a lot of disability advocacy, and I am autistic myself. I find this incredibly offensive, and I know she probably won't listen, but I want to make people aware that this is not okay, and those of us in the community do not condone this behaviour. It feels as though she is doing this for attention and for clout, and maybe I'm just feeding into that by making this video, but this really got to me and I just really wanted to address it and be like, this is not okay. And I think my perception is kind of skewed by how close this subject is to my heart. So I'm kind of struggling to articulate all the ways in which I think this is not okay. But my disability and something that impacts every single part of my life is not something for you to play pretend with.
So that was Reborns of Jess. You can find her on TikTok and show her nothing but love and support. Right? Because we're all adults and we would never send hate to anybody. And I'm shouting out her channel because I think she actually does an incredible job on her dolls. And I encourage people who might be interested in the reborn doll hobby to go check out her site. I think she's on reborns.com. She has a site on there, but her dolls are incredible. She's one of the good artists, right? They are so beautiful and they're really reasonably priced too. All of them were under $1,000 on there. So if you are interested in this hobby, I would definitely go follow her on TikTok. And if you want to buy, I would recommend. I have not bought one of her dolls, to be fair, so I can't speak to the actual product, but from what I saw online, she seems like one of the good artists. She's does incredible work. Okay, and then the other criticism about this whole community that unfortunately we have to talk about is a word I can't say on YouTube too much because, listen, I don't like censoring myself. That is the last thing that I want to do, trust me. But in order to keep making videos, I have to. So I unfortunately have to use the TikTok word for this, which is PDF files. With these hyper-realistic dolls being made, are there some people with nefarious intentions who are going to get a hold of them? And I know you guys know this by this point in the video, but I just want to stress that I am not talking about anybody we've talked about in this video. Again, 99.999999999% of people in this hobby would be horrified by this notion and have nothing to do with this. It begs the question though, if we are producing dolls like this, will there be the wrong type of person also secretly purchasing them because it's legal to do so? They're making extremely realistic babies, but not only babies, there's toddlers. And I have read, again, I wish I could unread it, but of horrifyingly that they have made pretty realistic other children that are older, that are, you know, prepubescent, but older doll children. And yeah, so we're going to talk about this a little bit. It's very uncomfortable, and I will just warn you now that you're going to be uncomfy. But some people argue that these types of people if you know what I mean. Can't say it. But these types of people, they can't help that they feel this way. So why wouldn't we give them a safe outlet where nobody real is harmed, right? It's just a doll. The doll cannot be emotionally, physically, or mentally harmed by this. You know, that is the argument for these types of dolls. I'm not saying I agree with that, because I don't. I actually am quite the opposite, but that is the argument. That's the objective argument for these, is like, is it better? Will these prevent these types of people from offending because they have an outlet for it? I told you this was going to be super uncomfy. Like I said, I disagree with this argument. I am on the opposite side. And the reason for that is because there's no ethical way to test this. You can't gather scientific data on whether somebody like this, somebody with nefarious intentions towards children, will not offend, because in order to test it, to get data on it, you'd have to involve real children, which obviously nobody would do in a million years, hopefully. So this is just inherently a really dangerous path to go down, in my opinion, because we don't know that this will prevent somebody from offending. And like I said, there's no way to test it without hurting real people. And so I think this is just a very dangerous thing to start considering, to start advocating for. And then I have read some stories about parents who were horrified, rightfully so, to find out that a picture of their child was used to make one of these customizable dolls. That full stop right there, that happens once. That should never happen ever, but that is enough for this to nix. Absolutely not an option. I mean, if there's a tiny chance that this would prevent crimes, like, I understand that argument, but we can't test that. And at worst case scenario, it normalizes it, perpetuates it, and makes the person doing it feel like it's more and more okay. And to me, it's very much like a serial killer starting out with animals. They don't usually stop with the animals, with the outlet being the animals. They almost always go on to escalate. And so that is why I do think that's a fair criticism for the production of these dolls. I just think they need to be made. This is so uncomfortable. I'm so sorry. I think the artists need to make them in a way that would make it not possible for creepy people to buy them. Like, if they buy them, it would be pointless to buy them. Again, I'm trying to say something without saying that. They would have to hopefully not be making these anatomically correct, is what I'm saying. And lastly, I just want to reiterate, we need to remember that people like this, it's not their fault. You know, they were born this way, but they do not need acceptance or an outlet. They need help. Serious mental health help, intervention, and therapy. And they need it badly. They need it intensely, and a lot of it. And unfortunately, many of them don't recognize that in themselves and don't go get it. Our society also makes it very inaccessible for them to get it because of the stigma, which I understand that too. But I'm not a therapist, but I just have a hard time believing that an outlet is going to help anybody in that scenario. So, okay. Hi, editing Hannah here. I just want a really quick clarification that I don't mean that this, just because I think that bad people do seek these out, I don't think that means that they shouldn't be made at all. I just realized that I kind of made it sound like I think that this is a good argument for them being completely like not even created. And I didn't mean to say that at all. It's not that I don't think that they should be a thing or anything like that just because there's bad people in the world, just that I understand the criticism there. Like, I think that is one reason why a lot of people don't like them, and I just kind of understand that point of view. Okay, so moving on from that, we're done with that very, very terrible and uncomfortable topic, and I'm really sorry, but we had to bring it up because it's just part of this whole niche, this whole world. And again, I hope people, if they're in this hobby, do not take that as me accusing them of anything, because I honestly think that almost every single person in this hobby has it for innocent pure therapeutic intentions. So all in all, I think Reborn dolls are great for a lot of people. I understand the therapy aspects, the how helpful it can be to some people, and also even if it's not, even if it's just a hobby or a collection thing, who cares? Most of the hobbyists are not hurting anybody. Like a lot of things though, social media seems to come in and ruin it. And I have come to the conclusion that I think that not only with Reborns, but with a lot of niches, it all comes down to competition on social media is where a lot of these controversies sprout out from. Everybody nowadays wants to be an influencer, wants to be a TikToker. And it's pretty well known that you have to pick a niche on social media in order to grow because you need to find a particular audience that way, an audience with a particular interest. But because niches often get saturated, people end up doing wackier and wackier things to stand out. And I think that social media issue can be applied to the Reborn doll community. The vast majority of the people in the community are great people. They're really interested in the hobby. They lift each other up. They buy from each other, you know, they talk to each other, they collab and stuff like that. But then we get people in the community buying formula, buying real formula and feeding it to their babies, doing autistic role play, which is crazy words to put together, role-playing cancer, showcasing terrifying looking dolls and stuff like that, you know? And I know that this is a pretty not saturated niche. Obviously, Reborn dolls is not like vlogging, you know, it's not very saturated, but I think the point still stands that like as more and more people start to join it, people feel like they need to stand out more and more. And I think that's where a lot of our problems come. The mom talking on social media about her and her ex-partner are fighting for custody over a doll. I'm sorry, but I'm 99.9% sure that that is just rage bait, and she knows it's going to get a lot of attention from people. It just starts to get out of hand. Y'all, I had to do a lot of censoring in this video, as you noticed, but if you'd like some uncensored videos, I do those over on my Patreon. We're actually working on a not safe for work iceberg over there right now. By the time this goes out, part 5 will be up. So there's like 5 hours of that iceberg already up, and it's on Dropbox, by the way, because it's not on YouTube anymore. Yeah, if you want to follow that saga too, it's all on Patreon. But so we have the not safe for work iceberg that I'm extremely crass and uncensored. If you want to hear me talk about adult things in a very, very blatant way, that's on Patreon. But we also do Netflix parties monthly over there. We do polls over there. I give personal life updates over there when I don't want to post it on all of social media. We have a private Discord server that people have a lot of fun in, and yeah, so much more. So please go check that out if you're interested. Oh, you have to do the mid-tier or above to get the exclusive videos. Sorry, I want to say that up front so that people aren't disappointed. But it has to be the $5 tier or above in order to get the exclusive videos. Big thank you to Bombas for sponsoring today's video. Don't forget, if you want 20% off your first order, if you're a new customer, please use my code at checkout for 20% off. Like, that's amazing. Go check out their website. Just go peruse it. Thank you so much to all the patrons on the screen right now. Special shout out to our newest top tiers, which we have quite a few new aliens this week, which, oh my God, so exciting. That is Miss Network, Haruto, Frank Holmes, Miss Cat, Nancy Boy 1982, Kath, Megan Rose, Sasha Salgado, Magnolia Kitty, and Funeral Pyre 333. Thank you for joining at the highest tier. I appreciate you all so much, and I will see the rest of you in the next one. Okay, bye.
Hela dagen